I think we should probably just go over this thing in its entirety because it's so short.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because this thing, there's so many things that this thing touches on that are blatantly 1,000% unconstitutional. Yeah, I think it's worth a good dive.
That was Nate of the Amblemen, just so everybody knows.
Kevin asks if this is a surge.
Is that a
How retro would that be, dude?
No,
dude. I only drink beer on this podcast.
Yeah, this is my favorite beer from a local brewery. It's a Sonic Rain. That's a pale ale. Can't see it as good from over there, but there you go. Colin's got me better. Yeah, there it is. It says personally my favorite beer. Yeah, from a local brewery. I'm a big fan of the pale ales over here. That was, for anybody who came in during the call, that was my friend Nate of the Amblemen. He is a battalion ranger out of the Joint Base, and he was talking to us a little bit about his opinion on the new paramilitary training ban bill that has been introduced out of the Senate. So we're going to go over that now. Nate was going into work, so we were just getting him on the phone, get his opinion before he had to go in. He said there.
He's a regular teams boy, isn't he?
Oh,
he's in the teams, man.
He's a dog.
I
bro.
love
That's
it,
what I'm
dude.
saying, and I loved when Brian was here that he made sure that we drew the distinction. He's like, this guy didn't just go to Ranger school. He's a battalion ranger. If the Rangers get deployed, this guy's fucking going. It's like, I like it, dude.
I prefer Daddy's Wine. If this is a brand name, I'm going to Google it. Or are you talking about Mr. Joseph G Unit makes wine?
Brews where he makes wine.
Making toilet wine, bro?
But also, Tiffany.
Florida man wine.
I think you know precisely the double entendre that you have. It's entendre?
Entendre.
Entendre?
Double entendre.
The entendre that you've dropped in our chat just now. And I don't appreciate that.
Daddy's Wine?
This is a family-friendly fucking program.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, so that was
I didn't even think Daddy's Wine. I just was like, I didn't know if that was a brand or he was like home brewing. Brew? Yeah.
If you're using the term daddy,
fermenting.
That's what I'm going to think of immediately, is something sexual.
I thought it was like, is it like a mead? Or is it a white wine?
I don't know.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm already grossed out by this concept already.
So we're going to go over this bill a little bit. This is Senate Bill 3589. This has to do with, yes, to amend Title 18 United States Code to prohibit unauthorized private paramilitary activity and for other purposes.
Unauthorized private paramilitary activity. Unauthorized. This is not authorized. You can't do paramilitary shit anymore. Because what does paramilitary mean? Let's Google that real quick.
This, I imagine, is to try and speak to the idea of state militias, because that's something that the lefties always like to throw around when we start to talk about the militia language in the Second Amendment. This is, well, the militias that were there were state militias, and they were, signed on by the state. They were conscripted, or not conscripted, but they were signed on to service, and they had, service times, and then they were gone, and they were. So that's, I think, like what that's an attempt to, is to be like, well, militias are only legitimized if they're recognized by the state anyway, and so anything that's an unauthorized militia is, I think that's probably what they're trying to.
Of an unofficial force organized similar to a military force. And that's paramilitary.
And
so
we'll get into this, I think, more, but the biggest takeaway as far as the verbal structure of this that I'm taking is they're talking about like leadership roles. That's the thing they keep referring to with groups, is that, a structure, any type of structure like this, a command structure or this structure. Ambleman has no structure.
Ain't no structure.
Ambleman is like Binnick. Everybody's the exact same. Everybody's just an employee here. Nothing is any different. Ambleman is just Ambleman. So y'all can fuck off. There's no structure here. Nobody's leading. Nobody's doing anything. Captain Riley is just Captain Riley in name only. That's
it's just a term of endearment.
It's his call sign. That's all.
Dude,
it's his call sign.
That's why I was like, when I first met him, I was like, yeah, so you're like the leader. It's like, nah, dude, we don't have leaders. There's no because he's like, he saw this coming down the pike, was like, nah, I'm not. No, there ain't. We don't have a leadership structure. We're just a bunch of boys.
It's because he's a good leader.
That's right.
he sees the IDs before we go down the road. He's been down this way before.
Which is why he's Captain Riley.
That's right. So the first part is a bunch of definitions that we'll kind of refer back to. It's the unauthorized paramilitary activity. This is the bottom part. Or the second part, when they're talking about describing exactly what unauthorized private paramilitary activity is. Offense: it shall be unlawful to knowingly, in a circumstance described in subsection B, while acting as part or on behalf of a private paramilitary organization and armed with a firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or other dangerous weapon. 1. publicly patrol, drill, or engage in techniques capable of causing bodily injury or death. 2, interfere with, interrupt, or attempt to interfere with or interrupt government operations or a government proceeding, which is already illegal. Interfere with or intimidate another person in that person's exercise of any right under the Constitution of the United States, which is already illegal. 4, assume the functions of a state law enforcement officer, peace officer, public official, whether or not acting under color of law, and thereby assert authority or purportive to assert authority over another person without the consent of that person. Again, already illegal. 5.
Carry on. We'll address these later.
5.
Not fully illegal.
Train to engage in any activity described in paragraphs 1 through 4. So train to do those things.
Yeah.
B, circumstances. The circumstances described in the subsection are that the conduct described in subsection A involves A, travel across the state line or national border, or B, the use of the channels, facilities, or instruments of interstate or foreign commerce. So it's driving on the roads.
Yeah. So if you use a federally funded highway to get to a location to do the training, you have committed the infraction. Moreover.
Yeah.
It's already a crime if you're doing it in your backyard, but if you use the state or a federally funded freeway to get from point A to point B to do your training, that's a twofer.
All back roads to Oakville, baby.
That's
2,
right.
involves a firearm, explosives, or incendiary device or dangerous weapon that has traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. So just keep your guns where you train at.
Yeah.
Is what it sounds. Excuse me. Involves the use of ammunition or a large capacity ammunition feeding device that has traveled, which is a fucking 30 round
No more
mag.
than 30 rounds, bro.
Yeah, that has traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. 4, obstructs, delays, or affects interstate or foreign commerce. 5, occurs wholly within any Commonwealth territory or possession of the United States. So that means even if you didn't travel through back or on interstate commerce to get there, if you're doing it in the United States, it's illegal. Exemptions. Subsection A shall not apply to 1, the armed forces of the United States, the National Guard, the naval militia, any regularly organized state militia. That's precisely what I'm talking about. Is that that's what they're cutting against. Is that, if you're part of what we would recognize as an organized state militia, then that would be okay to do these trainings. But if you're not, then it's not okay.
Whatever you do, do not try to file to become a state militia, because then you'll just be thrown in jail as a domestic terrorist.
Yes. Also, you'll become a Fed immediately.
Yeah.
Any unorganized or reserve militia called into service by a state or the United States, or any unorganized or reserve militia called into service by the state or the United States. So that means even in a circumstance in which the Amble men were called to service by an armed force, it would still be illegal for us to have conducted ourselves in this way prior to being called to service.
Yeah, only if the Amble men, as it were, existed before the call to service. You could not be training and just be loosely affiliated group of friends with guns that definitely don't train together or do anything like that, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, the state knows you exist, you get a phone call, say we have to activate you as an unofficial state militia, and then you can do your training.
Oh my God.
That's what that means. That doesn't mean anything. That's nothing.
Pretty hilarious.
That literally means
That's
nothing.
pretty hilarious.
That is a non-existent. This doesn't exist. That's not real.
We need to register and not train.
Yeah.
In hopes that one day we do get called up so that
Indeed.
we can train.
Yeah.
But hope that we don't ever actually have to go and fight.
Yeah, but all the training can only be done at your house, and that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
2, these are the exemptions. A group of individuals who associate as a military organization solely for purposes of historical reenactments. So if you're
So Civil War
battles,
reenactors, or
right?
we should start
Revolutionary
reenacting the Civil War, and that way we can get pretty close, or we can reenact like the Afghanistan conflict, and that way it counts.
War. That's a good one. Can you act out how you envision the second Civil War would go?
No, because that's not. It needs to be a reenactment of past events. But I mean, for God's sakes, we've got decades upon decades upon decades of past military experiences that we can draw from. I mean, everything special forces have fucked around in every goddamn country around the globe for decades now.
Yeah.
We just have to pick one that fits best to what we're doing.
Whatever looks most like.
I'm
the
sure,
terrain that we're
like,
training in.
like Fallujah or
If you're doing CGB training.
yeah, shit like that. Like you'll find one. We're reenactors. What are you talking
my
about? You've never heard of John Dudley or whatever the fuck who was in this one conflict. Who's the dude on your shirt? That sweatshirt that you always sport? The South Africa thing?
Obi-Wan Nairobi.
Word. I'm reenacting
Christian
that.
Craighead.
There we go.
Yeah.
See? I'm just a reenactor, bro.
Joseph, this has not been passed. This has been introduced. I will get to the Constitution thing because I'm right there with you. But
I'm ready to tear it down, Joseph. We just haven't gotten there yet.
yes, we'll get there. We're just going over the bill itself now.
All of the Bill of Rights. That's basically everything that it
Yes.
infringes upon.
B, parade in a public as part of bona fide veterans organization with no intent to engage in the activities prohibited by subsection A.
I'm
So
a
it's
member of the
okay-
VFW.
Hold on. Parade in public as part of a bona fide veterans organization with no intent to engage in activities prohibited by subsection A.
Yeah.
But those are one of the exemptions.
Yeah, so like you can be one of these dudes. I'm a member of the VFW that marches in the fucking Apple Cup parade or whatever the fuck, or I'm a part of the Veterans Motorcycle
this just means
Association.
You're exempt from the grouping part of
Yeah,
it.
you're not a part of paramilitary
Okay.
activity
You're-
that will be
okay.
away from this.
You're
so,
just a
yeah.
part of the because that's part of what's exempt is like the grouping part is getting together in any group of 3 or more. I think it says that's part of what's illegal.
but only to train.
Right.
But
So
you can
the-
get
okay.
together if you're a group
Okay.
of members that
You're
don't.
not gonna train.
If you don't want to train and you don't want to do paramilitary shit, but you also are a group of veterans who ride motorcycles together and
Right.
sport your jersey or your vests and stuff like that, we're not
Okay.
talking about you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Students in an educational institution authorized by the federal government or by state to teach military science as a prescribed part of the course and instruction when under the supervision of a military instructor. So that means if you go to West Point or some of these military academies,
ROTC,
Yeah.
Sea Cadets, Civil Air Patrol, that kind of stuff.
member of the organization that is authorized under federal or state law to provide paramilitary law enforcement or security services training or to engage in paramilitary activity, law enforcement or security services when performing the functions authorized by law, and in the case of paramilitary activity, law enforcement functions when under the direction and control of the government authority. So I think that means if you are a private citizen who has authority to instruct law enforcement
Yeah.
in shooting or something to that effect,
I'm a-
CQB training, some type
I'm a
of
retired member of the teams who now
Okay.
trains SWAT members how to
Yeah.
do CQB
Okay.
or
So
I'm
that's
a,
what,
yeah.
Okay. The penalty. So this are the penalties for this, right? Any person who violates subsection A, which we'll go over again in a few minutes, shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 1 year. It's a year in prison, or both, except that, right? That's a fine for whatever the fucking amount is. It probably says somewhere lower. In the case of violation that does not result in bodily injury and is committed by a person who has not, prior to the commission of the violation, been convicted of violating a federal or state law, the person may be sentenced to the probation for the term of not more than 1 year. In
Okay.
the case of a violation that occurs after, so that just means if you get a clean record, but someone rolls up on you and you're training with the dogs, you're going to get probation for a year. That's
Yeah.
what they're going to give you.
Or, well, could be.
A probation for up to 1 year.
Yeah.
That's what it says. If you've not been found convicted, if you've not been convicted of violating a federal or state law, the person may be sentenced to probation for a term of not more than 1 year.
Yeah.
So that's if you have a totally clean record and you get caught training with the dogs, they could give you probation for 1 year.
That's a could be.
What do you mean?
Like they say, any person shall be fined, because you have to pay attention to the shoulds and the shalls, right? Shall be
Yes.
fined under this title and imprisoned for no more than up to a year. In the case of, and then they go, okay, so like, but if you have a clean record
Yeah.
and you don't, and nobody was hurt while you're doing it,
Yeah.
you could get up to 1 year probation instead. It's
That's
not
what I'm
a.
saying.
It's not a. That's a prosecutorial discretion
Okay,
or
okay.
a judicial discretion
So,
thing.
okay, 'cause
if they
this-
don't like you
right.
because you're an asshole, then the judge goes, well, you get a fucking,
'Cause the
you get a
fine-
year. I'm
right.
throwing the book at you.
The fine in the year is this. The fine in the year in prison, in jail, is the standard, but it's not the mandatory minimum for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right. In the case of violation that occurs after the prior conviction under this section has become final, the person shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 2 years or both. So that's if you get caught a second time. If you're training with the dogs again,
2 years,
still
baby.
clean record. But the only other thing you've done is get caught training with the dogs before.
Yep.
Because they're definitely going to have their eye on you if you get caught one time.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get locked up potentially for 2 years.
Yeah, and Signal's not safe anymore, so
In the case of a
start note
violation,
passing.
In the case of violation that results in damage to property, the person shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 2 years or both. And in the case of violation that results in damage to property, so if someone's shit gets fucked up, but that could also be, you blew up the rocks on the national
It's
forest,
state property, bro.
Right.
It's state
Right.
property. You're in a state forest right now doing your fuck around, boys. And this is the second time you've done it. And that tree over there belongs to the state, and you damaged it because you shot it.
Yeah.
So guess what? Now you're looking at 5 years.
In the case of a violation that results in bodily injury, the person shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 5 years or both, or death. The person shall be fined under this title in prison for any term of years or for life.
Yeah, so in other words, that's when
You're training
you done
somebody
killed
dies.
somebody, so that's this statute is no longer going to
Regardless
take
of
control anymore.
circumstance.
Yeah.
Forfeiture. In general, any person who violates subsection A shall forfeit to the United States any property, personal or real, involved in, used, or intended to be used in any manner a part of, to commit or facilitate the commission of the violation, or that constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the violation. Any guns that you have, any ammunition, any equipment that you have that is related to any training at all in any way. That means if you have a 3D printer that you've been using, if you have anything that you've been using, if you have a radio, a computer that you've been using, your cell phone that you've been using to talk to any of those people, any type of social media, that's all gone.
All gone. Bye-bye. And I would assume at that point they're going to grab a warrant and search your home. And so
For sure.
everything's
to find
gone.
all the things.
Yeah.
Procedures. Section 413 of the Controlled Substances Act, with the exception of substances A and D, shall apply to the criminal forfeiture of property pursuant to the subsection. I think that has to do with the way that they claim property to the state. If you used in the commission of a crime, it now belongs to the state. Rule of construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed to preclude a violation of subsection A being committed by a person acting separately from any of the other members of the private military organization, provided the violation is committed in furtherance or in coordination with the acts of the other members. So this means that they can charge you individually and as the group.
Check.
You could be charged twice. They're
Yeah.
gonna
Individual
fucking,
and RICO, baby.
I was just going to say they're going to RICO you and get you by yourself. Preemption. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed as indicating an intent or part of the Congress to occupy the field in which any provisions of the chapter operate to the exclusion of state or local laws on the same subject matter, nor shall any provision of this chapter be construed to invalidate any provision of the state law unless the provision of state law is inconsistent with any of the purposes of this chapter. Civil remedies, public right of action, whether the Attorney General has reasonable cause to believe that any person or group of the persons has engaged in or is about to engage in any prohibited act by Section 2742, the Attorney General may bring a civil action for preventative relief, including an application for a permanent or temporary injunction, restraining order, or any other order in an appropriate district court of the United States. So that means if they think that you're going to train, if they think that you're training, they can get a civil order, which, depending on the state that you live in, could be a red flag order, which means they could come and seize all of your weapons. A restraining order, which means they could tell you
You can't hang out with your
with
boys.
your friends. Yep. And you can't talk to them.
Yeah, no engagement whatsoever. Minimum distance of, you have to
500
stay away.
feet. Private right of action. Any person injured as a result of any violation of section 2742 may bring a civil action individually or jointly with other aggrieved persons in an appropriate district court of the United States. So it means if you hurt somebody, then they can sue you also. Forfeiture. Any property subject to forfeiture pursuant in section 2742 may be forfeited to the United States in a civil case in accordance with the Procedures Act set forth in Chapter 42.
46.
Means they can take all your shit.
Yep. Okay, so
Let's go over some of these
go over the-
definitions really quick.
yeah, ammunition. The term ammunition
bullets,
is
right?
Yep, has the meaning given in that's
Armed
bullets.
forces. Dangerous weapon. The term dangerous weapon has a meaning given in section 930, which has to do. It's an assault weapon. Dangerous weapon is an AR-15. It's an anything like that.
Yeah.
Explosive or incendiary device. Firearm. The term firearm has the meaning given in the term section 921. Large capacity magazine, ammunition feeding device. The large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feeding strip, or similar device that has a capacity of or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10
rounds.
ammunition. Anything more than 10 rounds. Does not include an attached tubular device designed to accept or capable of operating only with the 22 caliber rimfire ammunition. So that means if you're going to do this, you got to do it with 22s.
Yep. It's the only way you can. And it you can't be a drum style magazine that holds over 10.
Third, National Guard has a meaning given in the term subject. We know the National Guard is person. The term person means any individual, partnership, corporation, company, association, firm, society, organization, or government entity whether incorporated or unincorporated, private paramilitary organization. The term private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associating under a command structure. That's, I think, going to be the key thing. We'll talk about this later. I don't see any way this makes it even to the floor.
Oh, no,
right?
no.
So there, but if it were to become law, the key to skirting it would be the command structure. That would be the command structure.
We're just loosely affiliated.
For the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit. So that would be the way around it. Would be there's no structure here. There's no rulers, there's no leaders, there's no anything. We're just fucking guys. We're just chilling.
We're just dudes. We're just friends that hang out.
Yes.
Well, who started the group? I don't know. At some point, we all ran into each other and somebody started a text message thread, but that's it.
Regularly organized state militia. The term regularly organized state militia includes a defense force authorized under Section 109C. State, the term state means state of the United States. So, yeah, they're talking about 3 or more. And
under a command structure.
Under command structure, yes.
So you cannot, there's no way to prove that or nothing like that. But.
And the big problem, I think, that the command structure would give, at least this language would give, it would potentially provide some coverage to the private actors, the groups and stuff like the Amble Men's out there, right? But where that comes into problem is if you're going to try and pay for training anywhere, that's done, right? Because that's a command structure. Someone is instructing you. That's someone who's above you. That's inherently there is a command structure involved in there because someone is instructing you.
Yeah,
right.
Unless, of course, it is a certified with the state company, like a Terran Tactical type of thing. We're like, okay, you can go here and do this stuff, but you can't pay, say, a gun grabber.
Yeah,
to go out and give you,
but that's also, and I think
unless he's operating in an official capacity, fully registered and licensed with the state.
There would be a really interesting discussion about where that line is drawn between firearms training, like actual concealed carry, the shit that people do every day, and that would still be legally allowed even underneath this. Like, this doesn't preclude you from owning a firearm or carrying anything like that. They can't do that federally, but they could. But that's beside the point. Anyway, like, that wouldn't preclude you from getting firearm training specifically, but it would have to be very structured. It would have to be super duper structured.
You're at a range with a licensed certified instructor. That's
it would have to be it would have to be licensed. It definitely wouldn't be able to be, like you said, just when I just paid that guy because I trusted
Shootarugi. That's who I was
because I trusted his knowledge. But it past that, if you're talking about anything like Tim Kennedy, what's his show? Sheepdog response, right? That goes past just private military or past just firearms training. There's more to it than that. If
what's
you're
that other
talking
guy?
About Mike Glover, right?
Mike Glover.
Yeah, that dude, he's teaching like a survivalist program. Like
exactly.
Anything like that. Done. Those guys were in the teams. Those guys were...
They're teams,
They
bros.
were Army Rangers. They were Green Berets. They were, what have you, all up and down the list, depending on what their service was. Those dudes can no longer provide that service.
Nope.
That's their whole livelihood because that's what they do to live. That's how they sustain their lives. That's gone now. They don't get to do that.
Bye-bye.
All the time that they gave to the military, to the government, learning those skills, they now die with you. They don't get to go on to anybody else.
Nope.
Certainly not your fucking children unless you only have one of them, So...
Well, and it would just be like the federal government to fuck their veterans like that, wouldn't it? Here, you're going to spend your lifetime where we give you a set of skills.
So that's what you're for.
And then once you leave, you have to forget all those and pretend like they never happened, and do not even begin to think you can offer those to the civilians out there, the fucking plebs, the serfs out there who we control.
And when Mike Glover says, "What about when the shit hits the fan?" The government says, "Well, that's what you're for. We call you guys again." Don't you know?
We're going to reactivate the militias.
Yeah.
We call up the retired teams guys and say, we need you guys to form a militia, and then you're good to go. And after we form you, after you all get the call and we make it all official in your Ohio 101, the bad boys, then you can go train. And hopefully nobody's gotten fat and happy and can't perform anymore.
Right. So this has been introduced by Senator Markey. Is his name Markey? Edward J. Markey.
Ed Markey.
Yes. And then, like I said, I
believe...
believe...
Where the fuck's he from again? I remember.
Maryland, I think. M.A. is Maryland, right?
Yeah.
So he's from Maryland. And then I'm pretty sure that the co-sponsor was Raskin, who I think is also from Maryland, right? And we just went
Yeah, this fuck, I remember him. He's a piece of shit.
Markey
From Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
That's
Yeah,
what it is.
MD is Maryland.
Yeah, Massachusetts.
And Raskin.
Yep.
I remember why I got rid of this keyboard, because the space bar is like, you can't hit it at the right angle with my giant ass hands. Raskin. Oh, this little fuck.
Yeah.
He pisses me off so much. He's a rep.
Oh, he's a represent. Oh, okay.
So he's the guy that would ferry it through the house.
Okay.
When
I knew he was
once it
attached to
passes
this
the
somehow.
Senate.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Because his name was being tied to it. Okay. So
He's a fucking piece of
that
shit.
makes a lot more sense.
And he is from.
He's from Maryland.
He's the Maryland fuck.
Yes.
Born in D.C. Imagine that shit.
Yes.
Born and bred into the fucking system. All right. So I want to hit the constitutionality of this. So let's look at the actual text of, the few lines where it says these are not allowed anymore, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it shall be unlawful to knowingly, in a circumstance described in Section B, while acting as a part of or on behalf of a private paramilitary organization and armed with firearms, explosives, or incendiary devices, or other dangerous weapons. Publicly patrol, drill, or engage in techniques capable of causing bodily injury or death. So that means no more neighborhood watch.
Not armed.
Not armed, or if you're going to do any training to do it. So like
Even
if
to
you
tackle
form
somebody.
a neighborhood watch and the intent is to security guard it, where your only job is if I see something, I say something, and that's it. You can't engage. You can't do anything like that.
Can't defend your actual neighborhood.
You can't do that. No, you can blow a whistle.
You can surveil it.
Phone call the 911 and hopefully say what's up.
Hope you don't get your ass beat before they get there.
Yeah, and hope the state doesn't have some kind of fucked up surveillance law, so you can't either gather evidence of a crime going down before the cops get there and the crime's already done. But fuck it. Interfere with, interrupt, or attempt to interfere with or interrupt government operations or a government proceeding.
Which is already illegal. To interrupt a government proceeding or operation is already illegal.
Yes. Which is already fucked up, because that's already, if there's a government procedure happening that is completely unconstitutional, you have the right to protest that, which this would then make it illegal to do that.
Right.
So if you are trying to interrupt...
This would also mean you can protest with a fucking gat outside of something.
Yeah, you can't do that. If you're armed with any dangerous weapon,
Yeah.
it could be a fucking piece of wood. Dangerous weapon is anything that could cause any kind of bodily harm whatsoever. I mean, dangerous weapon is built to be as vague as possible,
Right.
so that if they want to add on a charge, they can do that and make you go away for a long, long time. So, we're talking about freedom of association, really, is what we're talking about. First Amendment stuff all across the board here. Not to mention your Second Amendment, obviously, because
Right.
it's only if you have a gat on you, it's game over. Interfere with or intimidate other persons in that person's exercise of any right under the Constitution of the United States. Yeah, the only people that are allowed to stop you from exercising your rights are the government. We've talked about that many times on this show. The government has no accountability for when they take your rights away unlawfully, unconstitutionally. They just get to do it.
Right.
There was that, I remember that case up on the fucking Canadian border that we talked about maybe a couple years ago, where the feds just show up and say, you don't get to do this anymore because we said so. And then what are you going to do? Sue the federal government?
Right.
And they were like, well, the guy that told you couldn't do this was wrong, but it doesn't matter because he's an agent of the state and we're the state and you can't sue the state for doing this. So fuck it. Let's see. Train or engage in any activity described in paragraph 1. So yeah, training is not allowed. This whole thing, so it attacks freedom of association and the Second Amendment freedom to for a redress of grievance, protest for redress of grievance, which is all the First and Second Amendment are being trampled on completely under this. Not to mention, like, you know, the Fourth. I mean, you just fill in the blank. It's 100% unconstitutional.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Being necessary to the security of a free state. This, I think, speaks potentially most to that second section of the Second Amendment. Is that their obvious intent is to create a state that is not free.
Check.
If you do not have the ability to maintain a well-regulated militia, because that's what is necessary to regulate something, is training, right? That's oversight. That takes practice to regulate something.
Yes.
Some form of effort involved in there. That's obviously the intent is to create a state that is not free.
Isn't it interesting, too, that in their definitions, all they really do is describe the National Guard. They don't actually describe any kind of militia.
Yeah.
Paramilitary organization, regularly organized state militia. The term regularly organized state militia includes a defense force authorized under section. So, like, if you are that's the only type of militia that they would, that's how they get around that.
Right.
Because, you know,
So
you
you're
can have
recognized by the state.
Yeah, if you're a recognized militia by the state, which I don't know if we have a regular state. I'd be curious if we have a Washington state militia.
I actually do not know. It's important to talk about, I think, some of the aim of this. I have one article here. Boop. Copy. It's from guns.com.
Fucking guns.com, baby. Let's go.
And we'll read that. It was really nice to have Nate on the show.
It was. Even if only just for a second.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
What is this? The Washington State Guard. Okay, let's see. The militia of the state of Washington shall consist of all able-bodied citizens of the United States and all other able-bodied persons who have declared their intention to become citizens of the United States.
Click on that.
Residing. This is in the RCW. Composition of the militia.
Did this just give me a little bit of hope? Did you just give me a fucking freedom boner? And
I was like, wait a minute,
Get out of here.
RCW 38.04.030, composition of the militia. The militia of the state of Washington shall consist of all able-bodied citizens of the United States and all other able-bodied persons who have declared their intention to become citizens of the United States, residing within the state, who shall be more than 18 years of age and shall include all persons who are members of the National Guard and the State Guard, and said militia shall be divided into two classes, the organized militia and the unorganized militia.
Fuck out of my face, then.
It's in the fucking RCW, baby.
Fuck out of my face, then.
Let's fucking go. Fuck off, then.
You dumb bitch.
Well, then, go ahead and pass that, because by de facto, I reside in this state, and I'm an able-bodied man of over 18 years old, so I am technically a part of the Washington State fucking militia.
Fuck yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
To the south of the streets, coming at you every week.